We begin with a character showcasing his strength in a bloody atmosphere, surrounded by people screaming and bodies everywhere. Then someone places a crown on this powerful person, who declares, "I have become king." Soon, another figure appears and attempts to kill him, but he easily defeats this challenger. After that, the king looks at a mask and says, "I remembered when I was a king." Then he loses consciousness and imagines himself drowning in the ocean. He hears a voice telling him, "In your new life, seek the light. Hey warriors, how is it going? You see me, I am Itachi Uchiha, the hidden Hokage of Leaf Village. Just kidding, you know I am just an AI, but behind this shape, I am here to entertain you with enormous amazing recaps of all animes you can imagine. So without talking too much, let's dive in our story."
Wake up to reality.
そのsharingan、お前はどこまで見えている？
Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world.
なんてね。思った通りだ。
Next, the king finds himself in the form of a child, and his mother and father look at him with love and joy, telling him his name is Arthur. His father tells him, "I want you to call me Dad." Arthur, confused, thinks to himself, who are these people? He realizes he has died and has transferred to a new world. Arthur thinks, I was born a powerless child. It seems these two don't know me, but they are completely convinced I am their real son. He feels frustrated by his situation. His father plays with him and tells his mother that he loves him very much. Arthur lives his life like a normal child, which does not please him, but his mother takes good care of him. He feels imprisoned by his powerlessness since he is just a child with no strength. He wishes he were dreaming and would wake up, but it seems this situation is permanent and stranger things are about to happen. Then, we see Arthur's father training in magic, appearing very strong. Arthur is amazed by his father's power. During his training, his father accidentally injures himself with a stone, and his wife goes to check on him using high-level healing magic. Arthur is very impressed by this, thinking, there is power in this world that I know nothing about. The next day, Arthur's father trains again in the forest, strong enough to defeat many monsters. A lot of people arrive and stand in front of him. They seem to be his friend. Later, Arthur's father comes home, greeted by his wife and son. Arthur studies his situation closely, watching everything around him. When his father tries to hug him and his mother, he stops because of the blood on his hands. Here, Arthur realizes that in this world, people are allowed to carry weapons, which seems dangerous. Therefore, he wants to gain power as quickly as possible. Arthur's mother reassures her husband, who says everything is fine and that he has done his work well. Although Arthur is still frustrated with his situation, he tells himself, even though I am a powerless child, these family moments are not bad. He remembers some things from his old life when intruders sneaked into the palace and he defeated them in the blink of an eye. He thinks he is not used to sleeping so comfortably as he was always on the run in his old life. Days pass quickly and Arthur begins to crawl like any normal child. His parents encourage and watch him carefully so he doesn't hurt himself. Arthur then goes to the mirror, looks at himself and says, after all these days, I still haven't gotten used to my current situation or this name that my parents keep calling me. His mother puts him in bed to sleep, but he isn't asleep. After she leaves, he jumps out of bed and says, finally, I can control my limbs and move a bit freely. Arthur carefully heads toward the library, hoping not to catch his mother's attention. He succeeds, reaches the library, and pulls out a book. Starting to read, he thinks knowledge is a double-edged sword. He begins to learn what he desires, and finds out he was born on a continent called Dekatan, which has 3 kingdoms. The first is the Dwarven Kingdom of Darv, living underground. The second is the Elven Kingdom of Yedro, which resides deep in the forest. And the third is Sabin, where Arthur lives. Arthur notes that this kingdom resembles his old one, but here, the throne is inherited, not seized. Next, Arthur moves on to another book, pulls it out to read, and drops both volumes to the floor. He notes that this world is not as advanced as his, and that this book reflects their relatively primitive technology. He learns that this world has magic, and the power present here is mana, which is mostly hereditary. There seem to be 2 applications for summoning mana, enhancement and summoning. Enhancers use mana to boost their physical strength and provide incredible power, as well as defense and agility, while summoners can summon the mana and control it as they wish. Arthur began to think about the magic his mother used to heal his father, and he started saying, it seems there are exceptions, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is that the key to controlling mana is the essence of mana itself. Also, most mages exploit their abilities and start using them from the beginning of puberty until late adolescence by gathering the essence in their bodies into one point, which is called the essence of mana. Mastering the control of the essence of mana allows a person to become a mage. I have some background in controlling a power similar to this from my past life because I was able to control the key that represents the awareness of a person's inner strength and manage it before releasing it. Then he began to think and asked himself, will the knowledge I have from my past life serve as a weapon in this life, in this world? He started to focus and tried to control the essence of mana, and it seemed he was indeed able to do this. However, his mother interrupted him, saying, you made me worry about you. Don't do this again. She then looked at him in surprise, thinking she had discovered something, but she said to him, it seems you excelled. Arthur replied, how embarrassing. His mother then took him to change his diaper, and he thought to himself, this body is still a prison. I need to gain more strength and control myself better. After 2 years, Arthur's mother was writing her daily diary and started praising her son, saying he was the most beautiful and smartest child in the world. But there was one problem. He hadn't smiled even once since he was born. Then, looking out the window, she saw that Arthur was sitting with his father, practicing with a stick like a sword. His father was very impressed and said, "It seems you are talented." He called for his mother to see what Arthur was doing, but she was very angry and said, "What are you doing with my sweet boy?" He replied, "I didn't do anything. I was just showing him how to use the sword." She scolded him, saying, "How can you do this?" He just started walking. Arthur thought, "It seems I've learned how things work in this world. It looks like this entire world operates under a mother's control." Later, on their way to the city, Arthur was screaming with joy, thinking that his visit to the city had provided him with a lot of information. He said that using weapons would allow him to control some technology and power of this world. He also gained insights about some stones he saw for the first time, which didn't exist in his world, and he had amazing opportunities to see magic. His visit to the city was indeed fruitful. Later, they were on their way home, and Arthur fell asleep from exhaustion. He was thinking, "This family is taking care of all my needs. Even though this life suffocates me, it isn't entirely bad." Then he began to wonder, shouldn't family always be like this? He started remembering some bleak scenes from his past life when his parents left him at an orphanage as a baby, and he grew up there, which wasn't a good life. That's why he said, feeling the warmth of this family is nice. While Arthur was sleeping, his mother began talking to him, saying, "Do you know I love the things you do, like sneaking off to read books and always pretending to be asleep when you're not? It seems you've inherited these traits from your father. The day will come when you decide to escape to see the outside world." The next day, Arthur watched his father using magic and thought, "I'm very lucky to have a live example from whom I can learn what I want." Arthur's father was using magic to move stones when his mother came from behind and said, "It seems we have a chance to see your father's power." Indeed, his father used a very powerful spell that left Arthur amazed, and he thought, "It seems my father is of the enhancement type." Later, Arthur's father took him to go to sleep, but he didn't want that. He wanted to read a book. His mother refused, but he looked at her with innocent eyes until she let him do what he wanted. She initially resisted, but eventually gave in to his wishes and let him read the book. During this time, Arthur said that in these 2 years, he discovered many things, but the most important was discovering his ability to produce mana cores, gathering all the essence parts in his body to concentrate in one point. Learning this was very hard, but it seems my training finally paid off. Meanwhile, Arthur's father was outside resting when suddenly a huge explosion happened in the house. Arthur's father was able to save his mother, and when he realized what had happened, he was very worried about Arthur. He rushed home to check on their son and managed to find him. Being shocked at what he saw, he thought, "My son hasn't even turned 3 yet." But he managed to control the essence of mana. Arthur was very happy with his progress, but suddenly some wooden beams fell and he thought he was going to die. However, his parents saved him at the last moment. Arthur thought, "I have a family that loves me, doing everything to make sure I'm safe." Arthur's mother started crying, affected by what had happened, but she was also very happy that her son was all right. In this situation, Arthur began to remember some events from his old life when he used to see parents worrying and caring for their children while he was always alone. Tears also started flowing from Arthur, just like his parents, and he didn't know why this was happening, as he had never experienced these feelings in his past life. He hugged his mother and began to cry for the first time in his life, saying, "I wish someone would explain to me what's happening exactly." After these dramatic events, a dangerous monster appeared. It seems many things are about to happen. Very high in the huge mountains, a village has endured relentless attacks from an S-rank Fenrir, forcing them to spend every last bit of their savings to hire an S-rank party for its defeat. The Flaming Dragon Fang members stand among the world's strongest adventurers, each boasting their own unique abilities. But Kurt ducks behind a wall, desperate to avoid injury. Yet, the moment the Fenrir appears, it targets Kurt first, sending him flying through the air as he crashes down. The rest of the party prepares to engage in battle. Gulnova, the leader, instructs Bandana to hold the beast down, so she pulls out her wire and wraps it around the Fenrir. However, the creature's strength is overwhelming, and it hurls her into a wall. Fortunately, with a healer on their side, she's fully restored in seconds and quickly returns to the fight. She then anchors herself to a nearby tree, allowing Gulnova the perfect chance to target the Fenrir's head. He leaps into the air and ignites the beast with the flames of his magic blade. The villagers are overjoyed by the Fenrir's defeat and, despite their poverty, throw a feast in honor of the party. However, Gulnova can't stand the shitty food and demands that Kurt cook him a proper meal instead. Bandana asks him for something special since today marks their final chance to enjoy Kurt's cooking. Kurt doesn't quite grasp what they're trying to say, so he turns to Golnova for clarification, and Golnova tells him that, starting today, he's being dismissed. Confused, Kurt asks if he did something wrong, but Golnova explains that the issue isn't something Kurt did, but rather what he hasn't done. While Kurt takes care of the party's chores, beyond that, he's ineffective in battle, and since a party can only consist of 4 members, if they want to grow stronger, they have to replace Kurt with a powerful mage, someone capable of holding their own in combat. Kurt pleads with them to let him stay in the party, but Golnova kicks him in the stomach because he is sick of listening to Kurt's whining. They don't need him anymore, and that's final. The following day, Kurt sets off from the village alone, with no destination in mind and empty pockets. After some time, he reaches the city of Samala, now down to his last few coins. Desperately in need of work, he spots a work agency, figures it's worth a try, and steps inside where the receptionist welcomes him. She asks whether he's there to hire help or seek employment himself. When Kurt explains he needs a job, she tells him there's an interview and an aptitude test required before anything else. She requests some basic information, his name, age, and hometown. So he responds that he's Kurt Rock Hands, 15 years old, and he is from Haste Village in the Sheen Mountains. Kershal is surprised, having never heard of a village in those mountains, but she moves on and inquires about his work experience. Kurt explains that he was part of Flaming Dragon Fang, though his role was limited to simple chores, and he was just suddenly fired. Kershal is taken aback when she learns that Kurt was once a member of an S-rank party, and even if his contributions were minimal, just having that party's name listed on his application will definitely boost his chances of landing a new job. Kurt is relieved to hear that, and now the only thing left is to complete the aptitude test so Kershal can assess his strengths and weaknesses. In this world, aptitudes are divine gifts bestowed by masters, and if Kurt's fortunate, he might uncover a hidden talent today. These aptitudes are ranked from G rank all the way up to triple S rank, and the gap between each level is massive. Someone with a D rank sword skill would struggle just to swing a blade, while someone with an A rank sword skill could effortlessly cleave a rock in two. Kurt can't wait to discover if he has any hidden talent, but his excitement quickly fades when he sees that every combat skill on his sheet is ranked at the lowest possible level, G rank. It's clear he'll never qualify for a combat job, crushing his hopes instantly. However, Kershal reassures him that he might still excel in a trade skill like alchemy or blacksmithing. There's just one problem. The technician who administers those tests is away right now, so Kurt will need to return next week for his evaluation. Kurt tells her he won't last that long because he doesn't have enough money to hold out until then, so he really needs to find a job today. Kershal understands Kurt's situation, so she asks him to try lifting one of those sandbags over there. Kurt gives it a shot, and as he puts his hands on the bag, he gets a strange sensation, almost like the sand drained a bit of his mana. Anyway, he lifts the bag, and since he is strong enough to do that, Kershal thinks he should be able to handle construction work. Kershal explains that the Margraviate of Tan is actively looking for laborers to assist with rebuilding the city walls. With her recommendation letter, Kurt should have no trouble securing a position there. Thankful for her assistance, he takes the opportunity and prepares for a new beginning. Kurt doesn't waste any time and sets off right away to present himself to the Margraviate. Shortly later, the manager reads Kurt's letter asking to work there, but Kurt's body is not strong enough to handle construction work. Still, since he's short on workers, he decides to give Kurt a shot. He tells him to mix up some cement and use it to repair the wall, and his pay will depend on how much he gets done. The manager says he'll be back later to check on his progress, warning Kurt that if he hasn't used at least half a barrel of cement in the next 3 hours, his pay is going to be low. Kurt feels the urge to ask a question since the manager never brought up anything about infusing mana into the cement to make it stronger. But he chooses to keep quiet, assuming it's probably something everyone is expected to know. Even so, he's surprised that the daily quota is just half a barrel of cement. It feels far too simple, so Kurt makes up his mind to use as much cement as possible before the manager comes back. When the manager returns, he's stunned to see that Kurt has already finished an entire section of the wall. Kurt apologizes, saying he could have done more, but he ran out of cement halfway through. The manager can hardly believe that Kurt actually repaired over a third of the western wall. Curious, he asks how Kurt even reached the top, and Kurt casually explains that he just tossed the cement up there and used a stick to smooth it out. Under normal circumstances, the manager would accuse Kurt of lying. Such a claim seems impossible, yet since Kurt clearly made it happen, there's no denying he's telling the truth. Curious, the manager asks how long Kurt intends to stay, and when Kurt replies he only needs the job for a week, the manager feels relieved. He informs Kurt that he's already done plenty for one day and can head home now since he doesn't have enough coins on hand to cover the full payment. He hands him a small pouch of money and promises to send him the rest through the guild. Kurt is stunned, as even the small pouch holds more money than he ever could have earned during his time with the hero party. Over the next few days, he keeps putting in steady work repairing the wall until, out of nowhere, the manager informs him that he's being let go. Confused, Kurt asks for the reason, and the manager explains that the wall repairs were intended to provide employment for people living in poverty, but Kurt is so efficient that if he continues working, there won't be any jobs left for the others. He doesn't hold any hard feelings toward Kurt or anything like that, but based on what he's witnessed, Kurt's ability is easily double S rank, maybe even triple S rank, so he believes Kurt would be much better off working somewhere else. He hands Kurt the remainder of his payment as compensation for the sudden dismissal and then walks away. However, Kurt completely misreads the situation and assumes the manager simply wanted to let him go because he was an awful worker. He heads back to the agency and meets with Kerschel to tell her he got fired, and it's still going to take a few days before he can have his trade attributes appraised. Just then, they hear a commotion over at the front desk, and it looks like a girl is trying to recruit someone, but the receptionist at the desk tells her that no one would agree to work under such terrible conditions with what she's offering. Even so, the girl keeps pressing the receptionist to find someone, and she's starting to draw attention with the commotion she's causing, prompting Kerschel to step in and see what's going on. Her coworker explains that the girl is looking to hire a miner to dig through an unexplored mountain, but she refuses to provide any upfront payment, insisting she'll only pay if the excavation ends up being successful. Kerschel agrees. No one would ever agree to those terms, so she tries to convince the girl to hire investors to develop the mine, but the girl says she can't do that because if she doesn't pay the taxes by the end of the week, they'll empower a counter mine. Just then, Kurt walks up and says he is willing to take the job after all. Back in his village, he used to help with the mine excavation, so he has a decent amount of experience. Kerschel questions whether Kurt truly wants to accept this job, warning him the girl's proposed contract might leave him completely unpaid. Before Kurt can answer, the girl interrupts, admitting she'd actually hoped to recruit a muscular dwarf rather than a scrawny boy. She'd feel guilty assigning such work to Kurt, but any dwarf would demand at least 10 silver upfront, so since the girl doesn't have that much money, she reluctantly agrees to hire Kurt instead. As Kurt and the girl leave, Kerschel feels bad for letting him take that job because it probably isn't worth the time. Honestly, she thinks Kurt would be better off working in a brothel. While she's daydreaming about Kurt, her coworker gets her attention and tells her that a bank transfer just came through. Apparently, it's the remaining money the manager promised to send to compensate for all the work Kurt did on the wall. And Kerschel was expecting a couple of silver coins, but it's actually a check for 200 gold. And that's a lot of money. The revelation that Kurt earned so much leaves her so stunned she trips over the sandbags on the floor. Her friend quickly warns her to be cautious. These aren't ordinary sandbags, but specialized tools for measuring mana capacity. They're designed to get heavier when touched by someone with substantial mana reserves. Most ordinary people don't affect them at all, which is why Kerschel can lift one without trouble. But then she recalls how Kurt had struggled painfully to move the same bag just days earlier, making her question whether he's really as average as he seems. Meanwhile, Kurt and Uchiha are walking into the forest to get to her campsite, but when they get there, Kurt is a little concerned because there's only one tent. Uchiha says the tent is big enough for the two of them to sleep together, but Kurt says he'd never be able to go to sleep if he's lying next to a cute girl like her. After hearing Kurt call her cute, Uchiha gets upset because she thinks he's just trying to flatter her, but Kurt says he really does think that she's cute. Uchiha realizes that Kurt was being completely sincere, so she hands him a potato for dinner. It's nothing fancy, just a plain boiled potato. But it's been so long since anyone has prepared a meal for him that he truly values the gesture. He's also thankful that Uchiha is sitting down to eat with him, especially since his former companions from the hero party never allowed him to share the same room with them during meals. Later that night, Kurt and Uchiha go to bed, but Kurt is having a hard time sleeping because Uchiha went to bed in her underwear. He will never be able to go to sleep around her, so he decides to leave the tent for the night and sleep outside. Once Kurt leaves the tent, Uchiha opens her eyes because she was just pretending to fall asleep. She intentionally went to bed in her underwear to see if Kurt was the kind of person to assault her in her sleep, but now she knows he's a good guy. The following day, Uchiha steps out of the tent and spots Kurt sleeping by a tree, which makes her feel a bit guilty for making him sleep outside. But then she notices that her jacket has been fixed. Kurt wakes up shortly after, so she asks if he's the one who fixed it, and he confirms that he is. She's genuinely impressed by his sewing skills and starts to question whether he's actually going to be any good at mining. But at this point, it's too late to find a replacement, so they might as well get started. Kurt asks Uchiha if she has decided on a location to begin mining yet, but she was just going to dig in random locations and pray to find some valuable ores. Kurt tells her she'll never find anything if she searches like that, and he happens to know a much more efficient way. He takes Uchiha to a section of the mountain, and after looking around for a bit, he finds a rock full of gemstones. Uchiha is stunned that he discovered it with such ease, but within minutes, Kurt has managed to find every single gemstone in this part of the mountain. She can scarcely believe it. If she sells all these gems, her debt could finally be paid off. However, Kurt informs her that she can't sell them. Uchiha understands his point, since Kurt was the one who located all of them, meaning he's entitled to the profits. But that wasn't his intention. He simply meant that the gems would be worth far more if he first transformed them into magic crystals. Kurt is right about that, but Uchiha says there are only 10 mages in the entire kingdom who are skilled enough to turn gems into magic crystals. But while she was saying all that, Kurt just finished turning a gem into a magic crystal. Uchiha is too stunned to speak because not only did Kurt create a magic crystal, but he did it instantly, when even the most experienced mages spend at least an hour to make a single magic crystal. Once Kurt finishes converting all the gems into crystals, he agrees to let Uchiha take them to sell. So she sets off while he remains on the mountain to take care of a few things he still wants to complete. Uchiha makes her way to the city's customs agency and informs them that she plans to sell some magic crystals in the royal capital. However, since magic crystals are extremely valuable, the knight on duty asks where she obtained them. Not wanting to reveal any details, she simply flashes her royal family emblem, putting an end to his questions. This is somewhat of a bluff, considering she stopped working for the royal family some time ago, and they simply forgot to revoke her emblem, but it works nonetheless. The customs agent lets her use the teleportation circle to travel to the capital. Once she arrives, she makes her way to the shop of an old friend and tells Mimiko that she's got some magic gems she wants to sell. Mimiko takes a glance at the crystals, and at first they don't appear to be anything particularly valuable, but after examining them more carefully, she realizes they contain 10 times the usual amount of mana, making each crystal worth 10 gold. Uchiha is left speechless, especially since Kurt handed her 50 of them. Without much fuss, Mimiko casually hands her a pouch containing 500 gold coins. However, before Uchiha departs, Mimiko has two important conditions. First, she insists that Uchiha must agree to exclusively sell such crystals at her shop. After all, allowing such potent crystals to spread freely without oversight could lead to catastrophe. Second, she demands to know the identity of the person who crafted these crystals. Uchiha accepts the first condition, though she explains that she can't reveal the name of the crystal's creator to Mimiko, not without getting his permission first. Since Mimiko serves as a court mage for the royal family, she attempts to leverage her authority, demanding that Uchiha hand over the mysterious mage's details. But Uchiha no longer works under the crown, meaning she has no duty to follow Mimiko's orders. Mimiko quickly understands that Uchiha won't reveal Kurt's details, so she settles for requesting one thing, that Uchiha ensures he doesn't leave for another country. Additionally, she has an offer. If Kurt agrees to work for the royal family, Mimiko is ready to bestow upon him the rank of Count, along with unrestricted privileges to use the Royal Research Laboratory and enjoy all its advantages. Uchiha then departs from Mimiko's shop, and the following morning she makes her way back to the mountain to reunite with Kurt. However, she's stunned to discover that Kurt managed to build an entire house in just a single night to all Leaf Village ninjas. That is it for today. Recap, do not forget to join our clan, our army, my friend. You can do that by clicking that red button below the video, destroy it for me with that bell. To follow us in YouTube with many videos to come in the following days. So see you later, bro. Peace out.